to duck off because we're starting so late. But what we'll do is obviously have it recorded, and you can certainly listen to the recording afterwards if you do need to duck out. But again, thank you for your patience. I'm going to hand over to Hilary right now so she can officially introduce Ian and we can get this webinar on the way. If you do have any questions, be sure to type them into the questions section of your GoToWebinar control panel, and I can ask them to Ian at the end of the session. Any other comments or questions, there's also a chat section in the GoToWebinar panel that's on your screen. You can type that in there as well if you need to liaise with myself or anyone else. We can pass those messages on. But let me hand over to Hilary. Hilary, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Annalie. Happy Friday and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hilary from the PT Council. Thanks so much for tuning in this afternoon and taking some time out of your busy days to listen to what Ian's got to say. And a huge thank you for Ian for coming on and helping out the PT Council this afternoon.
Absolute pleasure.
Cool. Ian works for Odeon Movement, and he's going to share some really cool information with us today about retaining clients. Ian works for effective outcomes using systems, science and tools, and believes in life there is no absolute. No one knows all the answers. We're all in the problem-solving business of gathering information to create optimal clarity to solve clients' problems. Ian is a sought-after international speaker, coach and mentor, and we are very lucky to have him today. So sit back and enjoy the webinar. Thank you so much, Ian.
Thanks, Hilary. Not a problem at all. Great to be here. Now, guys, is my screen visible?
Yep, looks good.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so what we want to do today in this next 30 minutes is we want to go through and look at, once again, the simplicity of what creates simple outcomes for clients, of why clients would want to stay with you and why they would want to use you and how they can best optimize you in your business. So, you know, the very first thing I think about when, now, why doesn't my PowerPoint want to... Got some feedback there, guys. So the very first thing I want to give you is how I look at business. And this is predominantly how I look at business. Success is down to three things. Know your product, make sure your product's effective, and then service the hell out of it. So if you wanted to know nothing more than that, that would be the secret to business. However, we need to break down what that all means. The first thing I want to do now is I want to define what our role is, what our role as a coach or a trainer, and this is something in the industry, in our fitness industry and exercise industry, I think that we don't do very well. We've got lots of terms and lots of words that mean various things, but people don't really understand where they fit, and the definitions aren't consistent across the board. So the role that I see us as coaches is to meet the client where they need to be met. And it's interesting because we're very, very quick to tell people and to describe to people what we think they need. Well, there's some simple things that if we do and follow, we'll actually start to get far better results and we'll actually be able to meet them where they need to be met. The first thing we've got to start to do better is listen. You know, we have one mouth and two ears for a reason. Unfortunately, through our passion, through our excitement, we do get into habits of maybe listening to clients and then all of a sudden joining in the conversation instead of basically just listening to their story, listening to their goal, listening to their needs. Because it's interesting, when you have a conversation with someone, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, when we have a conversation with someone and that person doesn't necessarily talk a lot but seems to take a lot of attention into listening to our story, we very much are magnetised towards them. We want to be with them because we think, wow, what a caring person. So listening is something that, you know, I know in my position, when I first started in the industry a million years ago, I probably wasn't very good at it. But I can assure you now, understanding how important it is, not just in my role as a coach, but also in my role as a husband, in my role as a father, in my role as a friend, listening is far more important than necessarily talking. The next part of that role is to be a guide. And I've witnessed on many occasions how our industry creates people who want to tell the client what to do. They want to dictate to them the outcomes or the journey along the way. Realistically, guys, when someone comes to us, it's not our responsibility to tell them, to dictate to them, to force them to do anything. It's our job to guide them through their journey in a manner in which they're comfortable with and in a manner in which best suits them. Not every trainer and not every client are going to gel. But I can assure you, if you're a coach that creates the ability to be able to empower the client with the decision-making process, that client, that relationship will become stronger and that client won't want to leave. The third thing we must understand is that we aren't qualified to diagnose. We are purely movement appraisal coaches. And that's a pretty cool thing, we're in a pretty cool position to be in. Because when you look at other health professionals, they have the responsibility of diagnosing various issues, and which those issues from a physical, mental or emotional status can be serious diseases. They take responsibility for that. We haven't got it. What we've got to take responsibility for is being able to appraise the client in front of us today, their ability to be able to move in a safe and effective manner. And if we can understand that, then all of a sudden we don't work outside our definition, outside our role. We are going to build more respect with other allied health professionals than ever before. This is probably one of the most important points that I think that coaches or trainers miss out on. We have to be able to apply the information or the education or the research or the science that is given in our industry. And if we can't apply it, then realistically, there's no value to it. And it's interesting because, once again, our industry is very good at taking science and research, and it's very science and research driven. Now, that's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing. However, at the end of the day, in my practice isn't an evidence-based practice, it's a practice-based evidence. So in other words, I take science and research and I look at it from a common sense perspective. I apply it upon myself or to other people that I can play with it a bit to see whether there is an application, more importantly, whether there's an outcome. If there's a limited outcome, I know where to use it. If there's no outcome, I don't use it. Because once again, information without outcomes really isn't beneficial for the client. We have to be able to communicate. And communication isn't just verbal. In fact, 7% of what we say is taken in by the client. So this is paramount because I see lots of clients who try and copy their coaches or their trainers' movements, but the unfortunate part is the coach or the trainer doesn't move well themselves. So if we're going to feed our clients information, yes, we can do it verbally, but more importantly, if we've got a situation, we start to understand the brain and we start to understand behavioural change. If our clients are going to mirror what we do through the fact of mirror neurons, then we have to be able to move and move within a threshold that they will be able to duplicate and replicate. So communication is an asset that we must really work on. Once again, verbal is only 7%. We have to be able to be, able to move through the planes of motion, the distances, the directions, the heights of motion that our clients will need to move in a successful manner. And most importantly, I feel that we have to empower our clients. Once again, when I went through this industry in the early days, we were basically told that we want our clients 3 times a week, we want to see them for an hour at a time, and then, we'll be able to achieve their goals and away they go. Well, realistically, in this day and age, that's probably not that practical. And if anyone's trained a client for 3 times a week for a period of 12 or 13 or 14 years like I have, it's not always a realistic relationship. Because seeing someone at 6 a.m. 3 times a week for 13 years, I can assure you, unless you have these components of this role above the empower one, then you're not going to really be able to sustain that relationship. So being able to empower your client, meaning for me, is that I get to see them 1 hour a week, possibly 2. But the best part is if I can give them some takeaway tools, some takeaway education, some information that they can apply in the other 167 or 66 hours, now I'm actually becoming a coach that my clients will always come back to because I'm actually giving them a quality of life. And finally, you need to understand that you've got to have a good network around you. I have great physios, I have great chiros, osteos, massage therapists, all sorts of allied health professionals who I work with because of the fact that I'm only a very small link in the chain. So when my clients have areas that I'm not sure of, I just refer out. That's very, very simple. I just want to touch on this. This is interesting. This was taken from IHRSA about 5 years ago. And the reasons for dissension amongst clients and why they left their trainers or coaches. The first one was lack of good relationship / communication with their trainer. So it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you look at it, that's a super important component that we don't sometimes really nurture. They left because they didn't have a good relationship. They perceive their trainer as uncaring. Now that's a funny one because you would think that the reason you get into this industry is because you do care. But unfortunately, there's lots of trainers who get into this industry without asking the reason why are they in the industry. So if we haven't got compassion, then we really probably shouldn't be doing the job that we have. They perceive their trainer as incompetent. Now it's interesting because incompetent doesn't mean they didn't have the knowledge. Incompetent means that they couldn't apply what the client needed. So incompetency in any business will see your business fail. So being able to apply, as I said before, is super important. They placed a very low value on their investment. So the trainer really didn't have a huge amount of respect for the money that the client was spending. And that's an interesting one because of the fact that anytime anyone comes to you and they're prepared to pay their money, their cold hard cash, we have to understand that there's not just a financial commitment, but there's an emotional, physical, and a mental commitment as well. So to have respect for your clients at the utmost level is paramount. Number 5 was they didn't see any results. And this is an interesting one because to get results with your clients, especially when you think about lean body mass, weight loss, balance, strength, power, sports specificity, whatever it may be, isn't that hard. Because there's lots of research that tells you that we can do that because there's certain criteria if we follow that will work. But it's interesting because once again, if you think about it, obviously not getting results means you're not being able to apply what the program is actually designed to do. And finally, they became injured. So all of a sudden you've got a person who is investing their time, their money and their emotion into a trainer who's incompetent, and all of a sudden this incompetency now is seeing injuries starting to evolve. Not a good thing. And hence why our industry possibly isn't as well respected as it should be. So keep those reasons for dissent in your frontal lobe. Keep them in your forefront of your mind because if we can work on those points, we're going to make sure that we aren't a coach or a trainer who loses clients. Here's some simple facts about what clients want, what their requirements are. Clients are far more informed than ever before. The internet has just allowed them to create more research and information than ever before. So when a client comes to you and asks a question, 9 times out of 10, that question's been answered. So you better have some form of common sense, some form of research, or some form of ability to be able to find the answer because the clients more than likely will actually have the answer before you do. So make sure that when you make a statement, when you're talking about something that you're not quite sure, reference the fact that, you know what, this isn't my area. And I'll give you an example. Nutrition isn't something that I really get comfortable with because I feel it's far more complex than ever before. There's more nutritional books than ever before on the market, and yet obesity is an all-time high. So it shows you that unless you truly understand the intricacies of what nutrition is all about, unless you're a dietetic, you better be very careful advising your clients on what to eat, how to eat, when to eat. Here's some important components that you really have to look at if you want now to create success with your clients. The first one is relationship, and this is this is information, this is actually research that's well known, well documented. We now know that it's more important to be honest in a relationship than it is to be strategic, diplomatic, or political. So in other words, if someone asks you something, and I've heard many trainers say, no, 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 you'll be fine, or no, no, you don't look fat, or no, 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 that'll be okay, you can do that. You are far more respected if you're honest about it. And it's interesting because the very first thing is, are you safe? Are your clients in a safe environment? And this is the thing, when you have that honesty happening in your relationship, and think about this from any level, it's not just about you and your client, this is about you and your partner, this is about you and your child, this is about you and yourself. It's super important. If you don't feel safe, you won't want to go there. So the honesty factor is of the utmost importance. Can you and do you have a rapport with your clients? And simply put, you know, that rapport is something that has to be nurtured. It's not something that you just create and then walk away from and don't invest time and effort into. Rapport is something that I work on daily with everyone I come in contact. And this is the thing. Once again, I don't just talk about this, I live this. Trust. Guys, if we're, you know, and I've seen it overseas, if we're on our phones whilst our clients are training, you are now starting to break that trust. If we're not focused on our client, if we're not giving our clients what they need in that time that we've got them, you will now deplete the trust. And once you deplete that trust, as most of us have experienced in relationships, it's extremely hard to win that trust back. So having the ability to be able to focus for that full time that you're with that client, building and nurturing that trust, critical. And once again, communication. As we spoke about before, communication is 7% verbal. It's about how you're standing, it's about your body language, it's about how you move. That whole scenario with them in that time frame is really what's going to build and create this solid foundation of your relationship. And in your relationship, you want to be side by side. You know, you see a lot of relationships where it's a top-down or it's a bottom-up relationship. So, you know, you might be the guru. You might consider yourself to be a guru in what you do. And then you place your clients underneath you. So you dictate to them what they're going to do, how they're going to eat, what their schedule is going to be. Or it's the other way around, where you're placed underneath your client has lots of money and they tell you when you're going to train them and where you're going to be. And that's not healthy. If you want a successful relationship, it has to be side by side. There has to be all these components of a relationship involved so that that side by side relationship can grow and nurture and can start to evolve. The primacy effect is something that we really don't talk a lot about. It's starting to come into our industry now, and it's super, super important. And it's interesting because it's purely a perspective. It's what the client feels or sees about you. If you have a look at this picture in the right-hand corner, how many legs does the elephant have? And it's interesting because we could argue about it for hours on how many legs. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What matters is it's simply a perspective. So what the primacy effect really now tells us is cognitive bias towards initial observation or information. So there's 5 keys that you have to work at to create positive favour for you. And if you do that, you're going to have success. Your intention. You know, I talk a lot about intention. What is your intention? If your intention is at the highest level, then that first observation or the information that you give your client is going to be a winner. Because if your intention is to help, it doesn't matter whether the outcome may not be perfect, or it doesn't matter whether the outcome may not be exactly what you expected. Your intention is to help and create a better outcome from your client, then you are now ticking the very first effect of primacy. Second is confidence. When you are dealing with your client, you have to show a confidence level. It's no good going in and second-guessing yourself. The interesting thing that I see and I witnessed a lot these days is that when you see successful coaches and trainers, they have systems. And their systems are successful because they follow them. You know, I've had people come to my workshops that I've mentored, and the hardest thing they struggle with is the fact that they'll see something, they'll experience something, they'll feel something, but they still haven't got the confidence or possibly the courage to then continue to practice that when they move on or when they go back into their environment. Remember, guys, when we look at what we do, if we have confidence in what we do, it puts the client at ease, and it allows the client now to actually feel what you're trying to do with them. Enthusiasm is something that, it's funny because you'll see some trainers who are over the top and you'll see some trainers who are extremely, below the bar. Enthusiasm is something that's very, very powerful because our society these days doesn't necessarily have a lot of enthusiasm. So when you are with your client, to be enthusiastic about whatever they want to do, whatever their goals are, whatever their thoughts and processes are that day is essential. Enthusiasm just breeds. And if you've got a client who comes into you and they're a little bit down, they're a little bit fatigued, they've had other issues outside the studio or the gym, your enthusiasm can change that and change it instantly. And we'll talk later about how that can happen. And once again, the willingness to listen, not to advise, not to tell, but just to listen, so that they can purge whatever's inside them. And they just may have a lot of information through conversations, through relationship challenges that have happened that day or in the previous days prior to your session. Your ability just to listen and not comment and allow them to debrief and to purge is amazing. You'll find that what it does for the relationship is incredible. And once again, it's a huge sign of humility and respect. And of course, the presentation. How do you present yourself? Are you clean cut? Are you well dressed? Do you make sure that everything is on the money? Do you smell? I mean, I've seen trainers who do workouts and then go and train clients, and there's nothing worse than body odor, because once again, that's not showing a respect for your client coming in. You wouldn't want to work in an environment where you've got someone who's sweating and doesn't really smell that pleasant. So your presentation is incredibly important. Everything from cleaning your teeth, the presentation from being on time, presentation of how your uniform looks. Is it clean? Is it pressed? Is it wrinkled? Once again, the first observation or the information that you deliver is what's going to be remembered by your client. Listening. This is an interesting one because it's something that I thought I was good at, or thought that I've worked on hard over the years and thought I got good at until I really started to understand what listening is or was. It has nothing to do with agreeing. It's all about understanding. And it's interesting because once you start to listen to people, it's actually a really important part of observation that starts to give you loads and loads and loads of information about them. But next time you're out, just observe around you the conversations that take place. And you'll notice there'll be different types of listening. There'll be people who are talking to their friends and their friends simply aren't listening. So they'll be yapping away and their friends are just looking on their phone, not involved, not connected at all. The next ones will be pretending to listen. Yeah, okay, So once again, they've got their focus on, but there's nothing really happening in this relationship. It's very much the person's just wasting their words. Selective listening, where you start to pick up on every now and then when something in the conversation interests you. Once again, really all you're doing there is wasting time with a person that you probably don't really want to be with, because if you did, you wouldn't be selecting what they're talking to, or what they're talking about. Attentive listening. And attentive listening is great, where you're involved and you're encroached in their listening, but you're not really taking in what they're saying. So even though it's a better way of listening, it's still not that sincere listening that your client's after. Empathetic listening is really what we need. We need to show empathy when someone's in a conversation, to listen to what their emotional highs and lows are, to what's made their high, made their low, where they've come from, because as soon as we start to understand that information allows us then to unravel what can be causing pain, dysfunction, compensation, poor performance, whatever it may be in their body. Purely by listening to them in an empathetic manner now can change that instantly. So listening, guys, do me a favour, when you get a chance, when you go out, whether it be to a club, to a nightclub, for dinner, when you go to a sporting event, just watch how people talk and notice whether or not people are listening in these 5 different manners. Either they're not, they're pretending to listen, they're selectively listening, they're attentive, but not really taking it in, or they're empathetic. They're actually taking it in and they're actually quite intrigued and quite locked into the conversation. So having said what we've said now, let's put that into how OD on movement would create success out of all that information. And it's pretty simple. We have 3 major keys. The first key is we educate our clients. And we educate our clients through observation. And I love this picture because this is what a lot of coaches and a lot of trainers do. They think they observe, but they don't really. They close their eyes and they close their ears. So we actually then go through and start to teach our clients about movement, about feeling how they move, the physical nature of what's actually happening in the tissue. How does it feel when you move to where the body feels comfortable? Because realistically, they know their body more and far more intimately than we do. More importantly, they're only with us for 1 hour, possibly 2 hours a week. So they have to be able to observe their body within to be able to know what to feed it to keep it in an optimal condition for performance. We teach them how to observe themselves mentally. How and what are they thinking? And how that affects how they move. So once again, simple thoughts change the actions and the outcomes of what and where they are. We also teach them how to observe themselves emotionally. And if you can start to have an appreciation and an understanding of, if I've got a day where I'm emotionally challenged, and on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being absolutely shocking and 5 being great, and I'm sitting on a 1, how can I take myself from a 1 to a 5, or a 1 to a 3? Now, if I can firstly observe that I've got some emotional challenges and then apply some simple strategies, straight away now, I'm going to change that emotional state, which is going to change my mental and my physical. It's going to give me a better quality of life, but more importantly, what it means is now the system that I'm starting to create for my clients works. So education for us is super, super important. The second principle is enjoyment. Everything we do is about enjoyment. And really, one of the major things is interaction. We interact. We don't come into our performance centres and put people on bikes or put people on walkers or put people on rowers. And I'm not saying they're wrong or right or good or bad. What I'm saying is if someone's paying me to help them move and feel better, I want to interact with them. I want to play with them. I want to make sure that whatever they're doing, I'm doing. So once again, if I'm moving and moving reasonably well, then all of a sudden they're going to follow that because of the mirror neurons in their brain. And as you can see in the picture, my son, who was about 8 or 9 at that time, the clients love the kids involved in my environment. They love the fact that they can laugh and the kids just want to be involved and they want to play. And it's interesting because touch is something we need to get back into our environment. Touching people, just a simple touch on the shoulder, is amazing because we're pack animals. And that builds a confidence. It builds an understanding that touch actually generates an amazing feeling on the skin, but also it can generate hormones in the result of movement in your environment. We also listen. And can you start to hear, can you start to see as well that word is everywhere? We have to be good listeners to interact with people. And finally, we have to be able to move. If we can't move, how can we expect our clients to move well? And to move within a threshold that they're safe and comfortable with and that they enjoy. Understanding whether my client's a traditional type client or a really progressive or functional type client. I need to understand that, and if they are, what sort of movements would they like? If I understand that, my interaction, my enjoyment level goes up. Play, huge component of what I do. The neuroscience behind play and how it changes the brain instantly is incredible. And that's the key word, instant. I can take someone, or we can take someone into our environment and instantly change the way they feel, instantly change the way they move, and instantly change their whole mental perspective simply through playing something that they enjoy. So it's effective. And that's the interesting thing about when you start looking at being able to create enjoyment, that people can feel the change instantly, but more importantly, they can feel how they're changing. It's infectious. You know, I've got these three people here who have been long-time clients of mine, and they both train with different coaches. But it's interesting because as soon as one person laughs, the other person laughs. It's quite funny because we're happy because we smile. We don't smile because we're happy. And it's an interesting perspective when you sit back and observe what people, when they start to see other people laughing, they want part of it. They want that buy-in. They want to be involved in it. The third principle for us is empowerment. Being able to empower the client to take control of their life again. Well, the first thing to do is give them permission. If you permit someone to take control, you'll see this person evolve. You'll see them unravel. And one of the first things, as we said in one of the very first slides, was honesty. You need to be very honest with your clients about what their commitment needs to be, and in the fact that you can't fix anyone, and never have, we never have, but if they follow a simple strategy, if they can commit, then they are going to regain control. They are going to regain a quality of life. We empower our clients to regain humility. And what I mean by that is this, is that we become very egotistical. We tell the body what it needs. We tell the body how to move. We tell the body what to eat. In fact, no one knows a client's body better than a client. So having humility and asking the body how it feels after you've performed some form of movement or challenge is incredibly powerful. And it's interesting because every time I've done, you know, some form of assessment on clients over the years, I've always been bemused because every time I do an assessment, I find something different. So what I do now is I've got 4 movement patterns that I move people through, and I ask them how they feel. 9 times out of 10, they are far more accurate than what I am. We treat the body, we give the body what they feel it needs, and guess what? The outcome is huge. And we also empower them with servitude. And servitude is something, guys, that our industry doesn't do well. We think it does, it doesn't do well. Serving not only your client, serving yourself, and them serving themselves. And what I mean by that is empowering them to understand that if they need time out, if they need to have a sleep, it's okay. If they need to have a piece of chocolate today because they just feel like they want a piece of chocolate, it's okay. If they need to get out and do something because their body wants it, it's okay. So empowering our clients to understand what servitude is, on what level, is hugely important. Also empowering our clients to understand what their goals really are. You know, it's kind of interesting because you'll have people, and weight loss isn't my gig, you know, it's not what floats my boat. So therefore, for me, I see weight loss as being an outcome of getting people well. But it's interesting because when you start to ask a person what their goal is, and then they define what they think that means, and then you unravel what it really means, it's generally miles apart. So giving them clarity now to understand their goal now starts to lock in and create a much more solid belief mechanism. And the reason that's important is because if they understand what their goal is with clarity, they understand what's required and what is needed in commitment, their belief mechanism in achieving the outcome is far stronger. It's really all about one thing, and that's respect. Respect for them, respect for you, and respect for themselves. And that's something in our industry that really has fallen by the wayside. So permitting someone to have respect for themselves again, permitting someone to have respect for what they eat, how they move, how they dress, their attitude, how they're seen by other people, that's huge. And it's something that we as coaches have to do. And this is something, I guess, in society that we have become less good at, and that's being adaptable. You know, every day there'll be a situation that will change. Today, this presentation was supposed to be half an hour earlier, and through technicalities, we couldn't get there. I've got to be adaptable. You had to be adaptable. So being adaptable means the message still gets out, the job still gets done, but more importantly, that you don't stress about things. You don't get down on yourself, because as soon as you do, now the chances of a successful outcome start to diminish. So being adaptable is crucial. So here's a question. Today is all about, how do I retain my clients? Well, my first question is, what do you have that they require? You'll notice in this slide, we've got a weight loss, we've got movement, we've got mental toughness, we've got yoga, all sorts of terms that are bandied around this industry. But my first question is, remember the very first slide, success. What is your product? If you don't know what your product is, then how do you think that you're going to keep clients? How does it differentiate to everyone else? And I'll give you an example. For probably 13 years, I struggled with knowing what my product was. It was movement. But realistically, it wasn't movement. Movement's what I know and what I see, and movement to me is easy. And for whatever reason that may be. But really what my product is performance. Because what I'm really passionate at and what I'm good at is getting people to go from a place of non-efficient motion and movement to a place where they can do almost anything they want. So really what my product is performance. How does it differentiate? It differentiates from other people by the way I implement my system and what my system is all about. So if you don't know what your product is, if you can't differentiate yourself to anyone else, and guys, remember, there's an abundance of personal trainers around the world. What makes the good ones and the not so good ones any different? Because I hate the word personal trainer. Why? Because it means the person who's just come out and they've only just been in the industry for 12 months and maybe not getting the results or haven't been taught or haven't been mentored by someone, then I'm compared to that person purely by title. So knowing your product is crucial for you to understand how you can best get results for your business, but more importantly, how you best get results for your clients. Secondly, is it effective? And how is it effective? Once again, movement for me is something I do well. It's something I see very clearly. And it's interesting because for me, I can take people consistently in situations of whether it's be pain or discomfort or poor movement thresholds or poor performance, and I can improve them. Not fix them, I never have. And I certainly don't tell people that I do fix them. So I've got a system to now create an effective outcome or result for my client, but more importantly, I have the ability to be able to empower them to be able to repeat what they need to keep that effectiveness in their life. Well, that makes it very valuable because I deem them as saying, you only need to see me when you want, but you'll come back and we can then progress it or regress it or change what we need to change. Once again, the empowering effect. And service. People crave service. Once again, it's the time you're with them that creates the special effect relationship that empowers them to be successful when they're without you. So if you can create a service, for instance, if you have the time with them, you give them the tools, and then you have something on your website that they can go to and access the movements or the techniques, they can, text you if there's a problem, that's service. You're creating an outcome for them, but there's a security blanket there that they can actually rely on. So 3 important things. What's your product? How effective is it? And if it is effective, service the hell out of it. Here's a comparison of how we see sales. On the left-hand side here is traditional. And this is how I was taught. I want you to get a client in for 2 or 3 sessions per week. I want their money paid up front because that guarantees me money in the bank. I don't care how the client feels, it just guarantees me that they're locked in. If they paid up for 40 sessions, we used to give them discounted fees. So, all of a sudden now you're giving people a discount on your service. We would give them bulk packages to make it more attractive, once again, to lock them in. And the sessions were very much about me. I was telling them what they needed, how they should move, how many times they should see me. I was telling them what they should eat, how they should drink, it was just all about me. Well, that didn't quite really make a lot of sense to me because, one, it didn't build all the necessary requirements that I needed for a successful relationship. So this is how ODO Movement does it. For instance, we'll do 1 session per week, 1 session per month, 1 per session per fortnight, whatever is affordable and doable for my client because it's about my client. They pay as they go. So in other words, they're not locked into anything because in a relationship that sits side by side, if they don't see value in you, then why would they come to you? If they don't see all those points that we've spoken about today as being traits that you have, then why would they come to you? So I want people to come to me and pay me a fair price for what I do, but I want them to pay as they go. There's no discounts. And why should there be a discount for if I've sold them 40 sessions, if they're coming 40 times, I don't sell packages, but if they do 40 sessions, is my 40th session going to be any less effective than my first session? I would certainly hope not, because if it is, then why am I in the position I'm in? So I don't see why I should discount. Do doctors, do solicitors discount? No. And once again, it's about empowerment. I want my clients to go away from my performance centre or my studio, and I want them to be able to go to their gym, to go outside and play a sport, to play with their kids, to live pain-free, to have quality of life. I want that, because that means now, in my perspective, that I'm being successful at what I do. Change your perspective to change your outcome. If we keep doing the same old, we're going to get the same old result. Success. Here's our first slide. Know your product, be effective, and service the hell out of it. It hasn't changed, and it's never changed from any business that I've been in. Guys, here's some resources. ODON Movement has just launched a new website. ODON Movement is all about practical application. There's amazing people out there who talk about information all the time. This is about application. How do you take information, research and science and apply it to get amazing results? We do that through mentoring. We have face-to-face in Noosa. There's one in August and October this year, that should be. There's also online mentoring. We have DVDs and video downloads, and of course we have Facebook. If you want practical education, the best in the world, I consider, and I'm one of the co-founders of this, so I'm probably a little bit biased, but it is amazing. It's by 25 of the best in the world. www.ptaglobal.com. They have amazing bridging and advanced courses that are just phenomenal. And if you want PT Academy in Australia.com.au, they are delivering the information in Australia and New Zealand. So if you need any more information, please contact PT Academy if you want to do a bridging course, which takes us and brings in behavioural change and the system science and tools that now make our training a lot easier. Over time, but if there's any questions that need to be asked, now would be the time.
It looks like you've covered everything, I think. Because we don't have any questions there.
That's okay. They might all be asleep at this stage.
No, they're definitely not asleep. Thank you very much.
Look, guys, there's a lot of information that we've gone through in that 35 minutes or so. And the biggest thing about what I've learnt in the industry is we tend to do webinars, we tend to do workshops, we tend to go and buy DVDs, and we watch them once or we listen to them once. I feel, from my experience, the best thing is listen to something 2 or 3 times, go away from it, and come back in 6 weeks' time. Take some stuff out of it, apply it, and come back in 6 weeks' time and now re-listen to it and see if it makes sense or if it's been effective. If it has been, go back and do it again, because if it's been effective, you know it works.
Okay, look, guys. I think that that has been an amazing session. Definitely well worth the wait. Thank you, everybody, especially Ian, but also everybody who's been here. Thank you for being so adaptable. It's wonderful. Just so you know, Ian, Elena said loved it. Thank you, and Gold, good on you, said Bronnie. So again, apologies for the late start. Thank you for hanging in with us, and those who did leave, obviously you can have access to this so that you can listen and watch again and again and again. It's wonderful to have had you on board, Ian. Thank you also, Hilary, the PT Council, of course. And for now, I will wish you all a great rest of the day. Thank you again for your adaptability, and we will now end this webinar and say thanks again, and we'll see you next time. See you later.